One of the places that you want to go for financing is in the capital markets. Mr. Justus Agoti, please tell us some of the balance that you have seen when it comes to accessing financing through the capital markets. What are some of the opportunities that you would avail for any young entrepreneur or even for the marginalized? You're muted.
For once, I thought that my mic was on. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I was saying thank you very much for this opportunity to have a conversation on financing. I saw the questions that were being asked on Slido, and it took me back that, the same issues that have been affecting SMEs for a while now are the same issues we continue to grapple with. Just to take you back a bit, CMA is a regulator, the Capital Markets Authority. It regulates the capital markets industry, similar to, when you have central bank regulating the banking sector, or insurance regulatory authority regulating the insurance sector and such like. You also have, institutions like RBA, which regulate issues to do with retirement benefits. So what does CMA do? CMA regulates a number of players, because capital markets are a whole ecosystem which supports access to financing, because as you may be aware, there are always two parties to a transaction. There is the person who has the funds, and there is the person who requires the funds. And I had Elizabeth here talking about the banking sector and what it does. I think we are so very closely related as institutions, because we belong to the same financial sector. The only difference being, one, how long is one wanting to access capital? So for capital markets, we are usually focused on people who want to access capital for more than 1 year, as opposed to the banking sector, where access is usually for 1 year or less. Of course, over time, Elizabeth's team has gone into 3 years, 4 years, which is, we are comfortable with that. But ideally, the banking sector usually looks at a period that is a bit shorter compared to what capital markets look at. So what are the key instruments we have within capital markets? So majorly, we have what we call bonds. We also have equity or shares, if you like. So just to dig a little deeper for you to understand, if I want to borrow money, assume that I want to borrow money from Elizabeth today, if it is through capital markets, there is some documentation you prepare to support that. And of course, the relationship is I'm borrowing money from someone, so I'll have to pay back with some top up to take account of the fact that I've taken their money for a period, so that they get a return, given that they have lent me money, for example. And that is essentially what the bond does. The advantage of it is that you get a fixed, usually, you get a fixed return over a period. So for example, currently, the government has been borrowing funds from our market, and the average rate is around 17%. There was a recent issuance of what we are calling an infrastructure bond. So the government in this case is an issuer, and it has been wanting to access funding, and it does that through capital markets on a monthly basis. There are, of course, advantages and disadvantages of that, but just quickly linking it up with the SME sector. As an SME, you have a leeway within capital markets to borrow funds from stakeholders, because in capital markets, we have retail investors, we also have institutional investors, and those are the people that can actually be able to give you money, or can I say lend you money. Of course, it's through an arrangement in which you have a group of investors who are keen in investing in your SME. You prepare documentation, bring it to CMA, we consider that documentation. If you have all the systems and everything that is required according to the regulations, then we say go to the market and raise the funding you require. And it's usually within a span of time. So for those who are asking, how can I access funding, or how can I access financing? we have capital markets, and most of those who come to capital markets actually raise funds in the billions. Now, we recently have a framework that actually supports raising capital, which never used to happen, because when you come to our market, when you're an SME previously, it was a challenge. You would come first, you try to discover the price of the shares of your company before you raise capital. But now it's actually possible for you to come and immediately raise capital, and you don't need to have what I can call a credit history that is profitable, right? So we have loosened up the rules, realizing that the market is a bit challenged as we speak. So it's possible to raise funds through a bond. What you only need to do is put together the documentation. One advantage we have is that we don't require collateral. Yeah? The only collateral we require of you is putting together a documentation that will act as a document that investors will trust, or those who want to lend you money will trust as the basis of lending you money. And of course, CMA is standing in between to ensure that you don't go back on what you have promised. The second instrument would be equities. And in equities, you become a part shareholder in an SME when you invest in it. As opposed to a bond where the relationship ends once a repayment is made. I am just hoping that I'm clarifying that. So in summary, it's actually possible, and we have quite a number of provisions that one needs to meet in order for them to access capital markets. Of course, enabled by technology, because we are transitioning very quickly into technology, and you just need to be aware as to how that can happen. So awareness is a key issue. Of course, there's the cost of access. We are trying to address that through technology. And then you also need to be aware of what are the alternatives. Of course, we have the banking sector. You can also use friends to borrow from. You can use capital markets. You can win a lottery if you are able to be lucky. All those are alternatives. So it's for you to have access to all this information and consider it and see where can I get the lowest cost in terms of accessing the capital. So alternatives are there. You only need to be hungry for the information, so then ultimately you can access the capital you want.
I love it. Thank you so much for that.